Something pretty different over here in the. What are we doing today, Scotty? We'll look at it.
Yeah, I think it was when
All right, so for a quick update, I got all the harnesses, or both harnesses, kind of organized, and they're in the car. I pulled all of the old wiring out, so we've got a lot more room to work with, and you guys will be able to kind of see where I'm at with it. It's pretty clean. So the coiled up wires there, one's for the can, and the other two wires there are for sensor ground and sensor 5 volt. So it's going down into the steering pedal bracket mounting stuff, and then it branches out. And then, ow, my head. This is the branch going to the passenger or driver side. And that's the branch, sorry, going to the passenger side. Right there. If it looks like there's a little too much slack, of some of that'll come out, and I'm leaving some slack in case we want to do mil-spec bulkheads in the future. But yeah, so once again, driver side harness. I put tape right there to kind of center the wiring up in the hole. That way whenever we put a bulkhead there, it doesn't, or whenever it's actually centered with a bulkhead, it doesn't mess with any of my measurements. Yeah, this is the main harness. This has the injectors, cam and crank, air temp, water temp, alternator. So actually, it doesn't have the alternator. I have to add that because I kind of forgot. There is some stuff missing, so I need to run power to all of the injectors and sensor 5 volt, sensor ground. So this harness will beef up. All of these harnesses you see will beef up after I do that. I'm waiting on stuff from ProWire USA to do that, and I didn't want to wait to get all of these measurements. So the harness is going to come out of the car and go back in and then come back out again probably. But yeah, this guy will run over here to the intake. Yeah. And then this morning I kind of started on this side. I'll show you guys that. So you can see it comes out of that. And we're going to have a bulkhead there. It branches off to 3 different spots. One for the coils and the fuel pressure sensor. The other, this guy here, is going to be for the MAC valves and wastegate pressure sensor. This here is going to have our input shaft speed, drive shaft speed, flex fuel, fuel level, and then I added a spare input there for if in the future we want to do rear shock travel. I did the same for the front left. There's a spare input on the front right. So yeah, I'm gonna set the camera up. We'll get a time lapse going, and we got to get to work. Today's the 4th, so let me look at my calendar. So today's the 4th. We probably have 8 days. Yeah, no more than 8 days before the car's got to be on a trailer and we're going to Orlando for testing. So wish me luck. All right, guys, this is gonna be my first time trying to do a voiceover, so bear with me. I just figured it's gonna be hard for me to stop and talk you guys through everything that I'm doing while I'm doing it, just because we're kind of on a time crunch. So I figured we'll try this voiceover thing. What I'm doing here is I've clamped the ECU connector into the vise, and because of how we're branching the harness off, I am separating each branch of the harness just on the workbench, and I'll zip tie it up to lay it in the car. I think, like I said, I've never made an engine harness before, but if I had to guess, this is a pretty good way of going about it. That way you're not wrestling wires sitting in the car, or wrestling wires too bad. So yeah. All right. Also, bear with me because I'm kind of sick right now. So if I sound a little funny, more funny than normal, that's why. So it looks like this is the part where I actually got tripped up on one of the wires coming out of the back of the ECU. And this actually broke the wire right at the ECU connector. It didn't come out of the connector, like the pin. The wire didn't come out of the pin where it was crimped. It just broke the broke the wire right at the ECU connector. So I obviously cut it back and then depinned that connector, or that pin, and added a connector and repinned it in. So no big deal. I felt like an idiot and a big ogre. And you'll see me looking up at the papers that I've taped up on the cabinet above the workbench there. Once again, there's a lot of, this is the most writing and paperwork, I guess, that I've done working on a car. I'm just trying to keep everything nice and organized. Our last harness we never got a pin out with, and I'm going to make sure that down the road we know what every wire is and where it's going to. Alright, so obviously we've changed angles here. Fast forward a little bit, I dropped the harness in the car and passed it through the firewall everywhere it's going to pass through. I know I've said it before, so we branched it into 3 different spots, one of which being this passenger side wheel well, the other one is the driver's side wheel well, and then the main harness, I guess. It's not really main, but it's going through where the main harness went through the firewall before. The one going through the firewall is actually pretty basic. It's just injectors, oil pressure. We're going to add oil temp, air temp, coolant temp, everything that's on the motor. So right now I'm working on the passenger side, just kind of, once again, working on routing. And it breaks off in the wheel well and chases the front frame rail, and then it breaks off for the coils. So the longer harness there with the white wires you can see is what's going to go under the car, and that contains the drive shaft speed and input shaft speed, flex sensor, fuel level sensor, and I added a provision for if we want to add a rear shock sensor in the future. You can see me deep in thought here. I was trying to figure out the best way to route the coil triggers, because that's, like everything that I have routed so far, nothing has power to it. So I still need to supply everything with sensor ground, a lot of inputs, switch 12 volt, stuff like that. So, but I'm going to base all of those things off of the outputs and input wires. So the output wires being the coil wires that I'm kind of messing with right now. I'm just trying to figure out the best way to route them. because right inside that frame rail we've got the turbo manifolds, which produce a lot of heat. So if you see me at any point kind of just meandering around deep in thought, it's because I'm trying to figure out the best way, or at least what I think is the best way to route something. And there's Ethan. So changing angles again. We're up to the engine bay. I'm kind of routing. I must be pretty much done with the passenger side. So now I'm into the engine bay, routing the injector wires. Like I said, oil pressure, coolant temp, all of the things. So yeah. Yeah, I've used about 5,000 zip ties up to this point. I think I'm going to be pretty tired of that by the time we're done. And what you'll see Billy and Ethan working on is the plumbing for the brake, the handbrake, and we changed a lot of the plumbing for the front brakes, just rerouting it, and we moved the aftermarket proportioning valve into the passenger side wheel well to clean it up a little bit. So that's what they're working. Billy's also working on getting the new suspension parts installed. I think right here I'm trying to figure out the best way to route the idle air control valve and the TPS, whether I branch them off earlier or kind of run them with the injectors a little bit longer down to where basically they're at the intake versus coming right off the firewall. I think I'm still a little up in the air on that, but it's not a big deal. If we branch it off early, then we can just kind of zip tie it up with the injector harness there. So So now we're on to the driver's side. Once again, same deal. The coils are ran through there. We also are running the line lock and the driver's side wheel well. The crankcase, coolant pressure, pan vacuum sensor, and back pressure. yeah, crankcase, pan vacuum, same thing, and back pressure. So, and I left a couple spare inputs over there for a shock sensor and potentially, you know, if we want to use it for this, a laser ride height sensor. And, you know, I'm not sure the best place to mount a laser ride height sensor. I just did like a 5-minute Google search to kind of come up with something. There's not a single pin on the ECU that is not used. So there's spares all over the car, spare outputs, spare inputs. So we should be good no matter what. All right, so you see me over there at the white table. I pulled the harness from the car, which was kind of a tough decision to make. I felt like maybe there was more I needed to do, and I had it zip tied up in so many different places that I wanted to be sure that that it was the right decision to go ahead and pull the harness from the car. And I also trimmed everything to length. I left a good bit of length on everything. There should be at least 3 inches of extra length everywhere. Some places more. So, yeah, so we're on the table now, just kind of getting organized. I think I've already mentioned it. I needed to replace all of the shielded cables, because they're not 3 conductor, and that's what we want to use, is so we're able to shield the power, ground, and input. So I'm trying to get lengths for that so I can cut it. I only have 75 feet. So yeah, that's the first order of business. And I've kind of struggled on this more than I'd like to admit. You'll see me in a bit sitting down and I start stripping back, trying to terminate, I guess, the shielded cables, terminate the ground that's going to come off of them. And I kept cutting through the shield and into the conductors inside the cable, which is a no-no, obviously. So Billy offered some advice. It was well received, but by that point I was freaking so tired. So we'll see the end of day 1 here, or I guess probably day 2 or 3. I just knew it was right. It was time for me to go to bed and pick up, after I get off work next day. Yeah, my biggest problem with peeling back the outer shell for these shielded cables was I was under the impression that you had to cut circumferentially around the cable, and then you can bend it back and forth and it breaks the outer shell, and it's just kind of hard to do that, and I was obviously applying too much pressure, which was barely any at all. And Billy showed me, like, you literally barely even have to score it, like in just one spot, one small spot, and then you start bending it and it starts breaking. So after I figured that out, I was pretty much good to go. Alright, different angle again. This is the next day. And at this point, there's very minimal mistakes with the shielded cable. I think I made one more mistake whenever I was wearing a hole into the shield to pull the conductors through. I accidentally poked a hole in one of them, which was a bummer because I'm starting to run out of shielded cable. I already had more on order whenever I went to bed defeated the night before. I went ahead and ordered more because I thought, a couple more mistakes and we're going to be kind of shit out of luck. So, but yeah, minimal mistakes at this point. Yeah, just getting everything stripped back and kind of planning out how I'm going to bring them all together and then get it up close to the ECU, because the closer you shield it to the ECU, the less likely you are to pick up any noise at the back of the ECU connector. And if you see me on my phone, trust me, I'm not scrolling through Facebook 90% of the time. What I'm doing is I've kind of ran into a point where I need to seek some professional advice. Uh, so I send some messages, mainly to Steve, or Google some stuff. But yeah, or maybe I'm skipping a song on Spotify. Yep, this is the part where I start bringing it all together. And see, I got the parallel splice kind of twisted onto the braid there for the drain, and just crimped it down with my drain wire. And this is my first time using that capped on tape. It's supposed to be able to take a decent amount of heat and not leave a sticky residue. I actually end up having to redo this part, so if you notice, it looks a little bit different. I think I did that off camera. Something I didn't think about at the time was which direction that ground cable should go. You would think going down, towards the rest of the harness is the way to go. The problem is if you look up at the right side of the screen there, where I've got it really taped down, it branches off so quick that I wasn't able to make that happen. So I ended up having to redo the heat shrink and use a shorter piece. I also redid the crimp and flipped the drain wire to where... All right, guys, good morning. Back out in the garage with some wiring updates. I trimmed everything to length, and then I got a foldable table out to lay the harness out on. And yeah, we, if you can see here, we replaced the shielding cables that Lugori provided. And this is like, it's a preference thing. I'm going to overdo it because I don't want to question myself if we have problems down the road, as to if this is going to be a problem. It'd probably be fine, but we're going to overdo it. So, he had provided single conductor shielded cables. He actually provided dual conductor shielded cables for the cam and crank. I'm replacing all the shielded cable with 3 conductor. That way we can shield the sensor ground, 5 volt, and the input. Just shield it all. And I'm shielding everything. Strain gauge, drive shaft speed, input shaft speed, cam, crank, and that's all of it. So it's a lot of stuff to shield. But I did that last night. You'll see behind this heat shrink here. I should have showed you guys before I covered it up in the heat shrink. But yeah, so here's my inputs. This is going to be either sensor ground or 5 volt. But yeah, I threw some tape on the table, put these little adhesive zip tie mounts down and organized it. So this is the left side of the table here is the driver's side, right side is passenger side. This branch here is inside the car, it's staying inside the car. This branch is the passenger side branch, so we've got input shaft and drive shaft speed. And then this branch here is the spare connector that's going to be under the dash on the passenger side. Then another branch just before this branch right here, we're going through the firewall into the passenger side wheel well. All this is going under the car. This is staying in the wheel well, so we've got coils, our boost valve or our MAC valves, other sensors. Going back, so this branch right here is what's going into through the firewall. This is going through the driver's side wheel well. So following this down, we have cam and crank, injectors, idle air control, TPS, oil pressure, oil temp, air temp, coolant temp. Over here is our coils, and then back pressure, crankcase pressure, coolant pressure. Added a spare for the shock travel sensor, another spare in case you want to add a laser sensor. And then besides that, there should be one spare input inside the car, and then outside of the car on each side of the engine bay. So same goes with our blue outputs. There should be one spare in each area. And then yellows, there's going to be one spare in each area, except for I'm going to have a couple spares at the fuse box, so we can use those yellows to trigger relays if we want to. So yeah, right now I'm getting ready to pin these with our daily cruise. They're the mil spec or super seal pins or whatever, and these are custom, so you can use a normal Deutsch crimper. We're gonna pin those, get them in the back of the ECU, and then over here I've got 6 8-foot lengths of yellow wire. That should get us to where we need to go. I'm going to pin those because we have 6 spare yellows that have yet to be pinned. So yeah, that's what I'm working on whenever I get them all pinned and then routed through my zip ties. I think from that point, I'm going to go ahead and start replacing zip ties with our, I think it's called Kapton tape. It's heat resistant, so you can put it under rake ham and it's not going to melt and get all sticky. So yeah, and then after it's all taped up, get it in the car, test fit it, probably do a final trim to length. And I'm going to leave everything long, so hopefully it doesn't turn out being super ugly. But yeah, we'll do a final trim to length, and then yeah, so we'll pick back up at some point later in the day. I'll have a time lapse going. Billy's going to be out here. I'm not sure when, but yeah, Billy's going to be out here. I'm sure Ethan will be here. They still need to get the relay box mounted. And if we're going to move those bus bars, we need to probably do that now if we have the time. It's running towards the ECU connectors, and then I looped it around because that's going to branch to the interior stuff for the fuse box and the grounds and the power stuff, which is right under my arms right now, at the top right corner of the table. And you'll see I've got the multimeter out. So the kind of the crappy thing is whenever you're doing this, sometimes I know there's a better way to do this, but like I said, I've never done it before. So I'm just trying to figure out the best plan and start executing. Well, with them all heat shrinked up and in a common area, I didn't know what input was to what and what power was to what. So I had to ohm everything. And after I would ohm one thing, I ohmed the input shaft speed sensor, and then I located it on the ECU connector, and I would unclip it, unclip the ECU connector so I could pull the pin out, and put my new one in, one by one, to make sure I didn't mix anything up. And there's still always the potential to mix stuff up. I'm the guy who's gonna put it in the wrong place. So before anything gets loomed, definitely before we go starting the car, it's all gonna get ohmed out. All the connectors will be on it. Maybe the connectors won't be on it quite yet, but it'll be to the very final stages of the building the harness. Everything's gonna get ohmed to make sure it's in the right place. So right here you see those yellow wires that I just threw pins on. There were 4 open yellow spots or yellow outputs on the ECU connector, so I went ahead and made up some more flying leads, I guess, and I'm pretty sure no, one of them went to the driver's side, and 3 went to the fuse box area, because one of those 3 at the fuse box is going to power the line lock relay, and the other 2 are just going to be spare yellows at the relay box. So if we want to use the ECU to trigger relays. Right here, I'm adding our can pigtail. David Ligori supplied us with a flying lead, a twisted pair for the can. I literally just replaced this on the old harness, so I pulled it out of the old harness, and it looks good. So just use that. I know it's to a good length, and it was the right colors too. I'm sure David used the color scheme he did, because I think it's the same color scheme as most of his business and branding. But to match the rest of the can stuff that we get from Fuel Tech, or that we already have, white and yellow was what I wanted. And I really did not want to use the Molex stuff again and remake it, because Molex pins are, at least the pins I was using for the can stuff, they're super small, and I've got big fingers, and it was hard to make sure I was getting a good crimp. So yeah, if I could avoid that, I definitely would, and I believe I'm good. I think I did. So on the right side of your screen there, you'll see the paperwork again, that the pinout that David provided. There's also the 2 bundles of wire taped up there. One is sensor 5 volt, one is sensor ground. I'm kind of saving that for later in the ordeal. I actually don't even get to that in this video. There's going to be a lot of splices and stuff, and it has to be well planned out. That way you don't have splices stacked on top of each other, creating a big bulge in the harness that's not going to look good. So, and I'm using some Harbor Freight paracord to get lengths for stuff right now. Billy was nice enough to throw some masking tape down and give me some measurements on the side of the table. So this is the stage where I'm adding power to the harness, 12 volt power, and I started with relay stuff. So these wires that I'm adding right now are going to go from the output side of the relay into the harness to power different things. So I started with the coils. For the coils, I'm using 16 gauge, and obviously they're to do 2 different sides of the car, which kind of pans out in my favor, because I've been advised to use 2 relays, one for each bank of coils. So as you can see, those 2 red wires there, one's going to the passenger side, one's going to the driver's side. Those will each run into their own relay. Okay, and now I just did the starter wire. So once again, it's going to go from the starter relay up to the starter solenoid. So I'm kind of marking out on the harness where I'm going to probably wind up branching out my injector power, which is what I just put on the harness right there, that masking tape, and then measure it, because I'm going to run an 18 gauge from the the splice to the relay, and then from the splice to the injectors, I'm going to run it in 22 gauge. Once again, still cutting everything, hopefully more than long enough. Based off of measurements, it should be more than long enough. So that was the injectors. This is line lock, yeah. So I think now I'm going to get into the switch 12 volt side of stuff. So no relay, just whenever you turn the ignition on, it supplies 12 volt to these things. And I'm glad I clarified with Steve. I was just kind of under the assumption that cam and crank sensors get 5 volt like most other sensors. And upon clarification, they get 12 volt. So number one on the switch 12 volt circuit is going to be our cam and crank sensors. So and any pressure sensor or temperature sensor that I've ran into so far is going to get 5 volts. So that's pretty cut and dry. Actually, I guess temperature sensors I think get ground and input, so ignore that part. But pressure sensors get 5 volt, and that's the bulk of what we're using on this car. So cam and crank, solenoids normally get switched 12 volts. So my idle air control valve, we have 2 max solenoids for boost control. The flex fuel sensor, I believe there's some that can get one or the other, or some that get one and others that get the other. But talking to Steve, he said to go ahead and run 12 volt to the flex fuel sensor. I also had to do some research as far as what to run to the shock sensors, and everything I read was saying 5 volt. It's just the same wiring as a pressure sensor. And I'm also, once again, I'm adding spares. So there's going to be a spare connector on each side of the engine bay, I guess, and 1 spare connector in the car. And all of these spare connectors are going to have like one of everything at least. So here, still working on switch 12 volt stuff. So where I'm bringing all those wires together right there is going to be a splice. I believe I have 16 gauge running from the switch 12 volt bus bar to that splice, and then the rest will be 18 gauge out to another splice in each branch of the harness, which should get 22 gauge after that. So next I add a piece of paracord to the top right part of the table, which is where everything's going to connect to the relay box. I do this, that piece of paracord is measured to the maximum amount or maximum length I need to get to wherever we mount the relay box. So I'm doing this so I can pull some of the slack out of that part of the wiring and put it back into the engine side of the harness. So when we go to twist everything up and make it look nicer, I can trim it back more if I need to and just know that I'll be good. Alright guys, if you made it to this point, I really appreciate you guys watching. I'm going to show you kind of my progress right now, and then we'll conclude the video. So yeah. Kind of looks like a mess, but I feel like I have a pretty good idea of what's going on. So, a couple updates really quick. I'm not sure that we're going to make it to OSW. Got to thinking a little more about it, and man, it would really suck to drive all the way down there and then have to drive all the way back just to go back down there, in a week and a half. So, good news is, though, SICK released, they have 2 days of testing prior to SICK week actually starting. So we bought the tech card for that. So we're in for the 2 days of testing prior to. Also, I want to say the Wednesday before, there's a test and tune at Orlando Speed World. And then the Thursday before, so the next day, there's testing at Bradenton. And then Friday, we'll start testing for SICK week. So Friday, so we have test and tunes in the within the 2 hours around Gainesville, Wednesday, Thursday, and then Friday, Saturday at Gainesville, and then day 0 testing. So, and I've spoke to some people about us, the potential of us getting our NHRA license in that short time span, and it's looking like we're going to be a go for getting our NHRA license. So that's really good news. The other thing is, I apologize for the music selection. And unfortunately, there's not really a much better way to do what I'm doing unless somebody wants to follow me around with a camera. And that would take hours and hours and hours of editing because there's a bunch of shit you guys don't care about. I guess you might not care about any of it, but as far as the music selection goes, I'm kind of limited. There's an app I use to get non-copyrighted music, and there's not a lot of stuff on there, so it just is what it is as far as the music. So yeah, in the comments, let me know what you thought about this style. I feel like it's a little bit different than what we normally do. I put a little bit more effort into it. First time doing a voiceover. Like I said, I'm sick. I'm still sick. So yeah. If you have any advice, also put that in the comments. So Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, guys. Stay tuned for part 2 of this nightmare. Yeah, thanks for watching. Catch you guys later.